Alrighty, everyone. Verrill here, Flow Roofing out of Portland. Let's not be confused. There is another Flow Roofing in the country owned by Phil, an amazing metal roofer who is out of Tennessee. And funny enough, me and Phil have connected because we both know each other. We're like, you're Flow. And I own the trademark, he owns the .com. So we have a mutual interest in flowing together. Actually provided him a type of operating agreement that gave him more of the peace of mind that he asked for. I have no intentions of expanding all the way over to Tennessee, Phil, so I'm trying to get north here. So onwards to Seattle. So this question is more frequently asked than I would have thought at entering the roofing industry 8 years ago. And I don't know why we haven't actually covered it yet. And it really depends. And so we'll try to have reflections in the commercial and the residential space. I was doing a couple of these work orders for replacements. Customers are signing up here in the spring. These are just the inspections I did last week, a couple. And I know the residential team has their own thing going, but I try to help with the capacity when necessary because we're getting anywhere from about 5 to 10 inspection requests a day, but we'll have to distribute the inspection requests through the current residential inspectors. Maybe have a project manager stop by depending on the scope. If it's a gutter request or repair, we can stop by, take a look, and prescribe. But we like to have our roofing inspectors inspect residential roofs because they understand the cadence of the inspection, so that way you can have a consistent, flowing, successful project. We don't want to deviate from anything other than what we know works. Again, low and slow is how we flow. And the idea is that in order to carve a canyon in time, with how we flow, consistency is going to be the detail that will allow us to continue to flow and continue to grow. And trying to get fancy with roofs, I'll tell this to customers too all the time. It's like, you want your roof to be boring. You want your roof to be perfectly boring, which is, it's just a roof. You take care of it because it keeps you dry. You got yourself an exciting roof, you got yourself some headaches. And we don't want that for anyone. This question again, how long does it take a roof installation in Portland, Oregon? Anywhere in the Pacific Northwest, we have a luxury called liquid sunshine. Comes down from the sky, loves to interrupt an already pre-scheduled itinerary for production departments and crews that force us to schedule and provide additional resources to our teams in a way that lets them react to sudden weather changes, which is a long-winded explanation of saying that we roof prepared to dry in what we tear off, which is what's required in making sure you're not overexposing a property from the potential of a leak that once you open up a roof, you're then liable for. And I tell this from a first story perspective, is that we have had an issue where a crew in the past, is like maybe 3 years ago, did not properly remember their downspout on the second story was draining onto the first story, and a single shower came through in the spring, and that downspout quickly identified itself inside the house. So you got to fix your mistakes. No one's perfect. You own up to it, you make it right, and you keep flowing, you keep growing. I don't like crews having to learn the hard way, and I certainly don't like having to pay for repairs. I don't want homeowners to have to go through it too. It's just a pain in the butt. You lose confidence, all that stuff. So, but it's not always about getting knocked down. It's about keep getting back up, right? So back to the canyon analogy. So roof installations on the residential side before we go into commercial, because commercial is a completely different beast. We've seen multi-phase, multi-year projects in commercial. You just don't get that in residential, unless even you're sub-bidding on like some sort of development, and that development's going to take years. I got something like that going over in Bend. I think they got hundreds of houses going up, and I guarantee there's probably a multitude of different subs. You would not put all of your eggs in one sub basket, knowing that the Bend talent pool for labor is a relatively thin pool, pretty shallow, I guess would be a better analogy. There's already individuals that know there are going to be issues in those developments, and I think anyone out there that lives in a cookie cutter development, some of these neighborhoods where the floor plan varies only just subtly and then it repeats itself every 4 or 5, you understand that there are issues that show themselves because the build-to-grade materials just don't last that long. And then you combine that with the lowest price bidder, it barely just passes inspection, and then it fails on you in 5 to 10 years, and you got yourself a new house with issues. So back to what it takes in a timeline perspective for residential roofs. The things that matter that will change the timeline for your replacement. How far are you from Portland is not the biggest one, but it does matter. Our crews that we train do have to commute, and so that commute means that maybe they don't show up till 8 o'clock. They'll leave a little bit early if they need to, and we speed things up. Production opens up at 6 here, and soon when the sun starts shining, we've got ourselves 2 weeks of potential liquid sunshine in the forecast, which is ever so lovely in the Northwest. We just have to roll with the punches, and there's nothing you can do about it. And I think from a business owner perspective, it's probably the most frustrating thing about trying to create predictability and consistency and a smooth flowing calendar and happy customers is trying to control something that you can't control, like the weather. It's so frustrating. But you mobilize when you can, you take your shots, you reduce liability, you don't overexpose, and you train properly, and things end up working. So on the residential side, other things that will affect the installation timeline. Obviously, the materials being installed. So we don't do any 3-tab anymore, and there's a lot of architectural single laminates out there. Even presidentials, which are double and potentially triple laminates, which I don't suggest, and I've heard myself talk about that in past videos, which you can do research on. Triple laminates are really just a marketing gimmick. They look snazzy for a little bit, but they fade relatively quickly. You're just paying for extra materials. I wouldn't waste your time. If you're going to look at a double laminate, like a presidential or sawtooth style, I would look at the Windsor system from Malarkey if you want the best performance, long-lasting investment. Bar none, you can't compete with anything else. It's just not going to compare. Malarkey this year, going on 70 years, started in Portland, Oregon for the Pacific Northwest, came in with industry giants on either side of them. You got Owens Corning, who has probably killed more people. I'm not even joking. Literally has killed more people than a lot of other natural disasters because of their, I will say, potentially knowing about the information that the chemicals and the substances in their product, in their factories where their factory workers were working before the asbestos in the 70s and then even in the 90s became more of an industrial safety standard. There are other manufacturers that I will eventually need to mention to everyone, having done more research on this whole asbestos issue, which is still a major issue. and even up into the 90s, still being put in products on homes, which is super sketchy. So having just breathed in a bunch of fiberglass yesterday, helping the team on a flat roof, I was like, I'm going to have to say something about all this. So team's got their N95s on, and I'm like coughing up a lung. I'm like, oh, there goes a year or two off my life. But so roofing material will affect the timeline. You cannot tell me that a metal roof is going to take less time than an asphalt roof, unless it's maybe a pole barn exposed fastener with 2 straight planes, 40-foot runs. A shingle roof take a day or two for the average house of about 20 to 30 squares. And so if your house is at a square foot rate, let's just clear up any confusion here too. If you have 1,000 square foot home, and that's a very small cottage, right? Or maybe it's a cabin for you, and your house is about a 612, that roof will be somewhere between 12 and 14 total squares, or 1,400 roughly square feet of material. Because of the Pythagorean theorem and how geometry works, there's more roofing than there's square footage of your foundation. So you're like, oh, but so my house is actually 2,000 square feet, but you're quoting me about 28 squares of material here. I don't understand. Well, Mr. Professor, back to college algebra here. Not even that. It's high school, middle school, Pythagorean theorem. But I remember teaching it back at Oregon State. So college algebra, the most failed course of any college education program back in the day. I think I was just a B student, but stuck with it well enough so I can try to be a value to future students, and then pivoted over to the cadaver lab there for a couple terms. But yeah, anyway, 20 to 30 square asphalt system. Give it an extra day for gutters. Give it an extra day if it's presidential because it's heavier. Takes more product to install because it's a thicker product, so you got to install more of the same product to cover the same square area, so it's heavier, you got to move it around. And give it an extra day if you got terrible access, northeast, southeast parts of Vancouver, no driveway, wires and trees overhead, maybe materials need to be ground dropped, which means that we're going to have to hoof it up onto the roof. Okay, so give it that extra day for gutters, give it an extra day if it's got bad access, we have to haul it, give it an extra day if it's a thicker product, okay? Just on the asphalt side of things, for a standard 20 to 30 square roof, not excessively steep, okay? Total install about 2 to 3 days tops. If it's a 30 to 50 square roof, I always like to set the expectation, give us 4 to 5 days. Let's do a good job here. Let's not try to rush it in 3 or 4, okay? I want my crews to get out the first time, magnet sweep. I want the customer to look up and be like, God damn, glad I didn't have to do that, right? Let us take that work off your shoulders. We've seen a lot of bad DIY projects, so hopefully we can save you some headaches. If a roof is excessively steep, give it an extra day or two, okay? Talking 12/12s and up, okay? If you've got some sort of barn-dough style, and it's like an 1812 or a 2012 on the sides, it's going to be a lot of ladder work, and ladder work takes a lot more time. If your roof has additional layers or needs a full resheet because it has no plywood or it's completely toasted. We've seen new development style properties have a need for replacing curling decking because you need a nice flat surface to do roofing right. We've had to replace 60+% of a newer, less than 30-year-old house. And it's really that's going to relate a little bit to the ventilation stuff. But in a 20 and 30 square house that's excessively steep, give it an extra day. If it's a moderately large place, 3 to 5,000 square feet, I consider that large. There's definitely places that are bigger, but then you start to get into custom and luxury. And then from there, it goes into commercial. But those properties, 3 to 5 days. Weather, barring any crazy weather, and not including gutters, not including excessive steepness, assuming one layer, no excessive plywood needs, right? And not a double laminate. So anywhere from about 2 to 5 days on a standard residential house, if it falls into those categories, then it's going to add to the quote complexity or the access or the logistics of making sure that that property is protected the first time. So metal on the same properties listed, 20 to 30 squares, I think roughly I've seen crews be right around 6 to 8 days for 20 to 30 squares, walkable. Because of the flashing details all hand cut, because of all the terminations around the penetrations, the valleys, they have hooked cleats, and the bullnose drip has to be hand bent to do roofing right in metal with snap Z and butyl tapes, and then rivets on the ridge and etc. All this detail that goes into it, and then not including the gutters as well. I think 5 to 8 days on that. And then so if it gets steeper, it's even slower. If it's excessively cut up, you've got extra dormers all everywhere. You've got 20 million skylights that all have to be flashed. That's going to take a lot longer. Could take anywhere from 2 weeks plus, depending on the amount of penetrations, the types and numbers of facets you have, the steepness as well. The existing roofing needs to qualify you for a metal roof. Not every roof replacement is going to allow for metal. If you've got some sagging going on from structural or poor ventilation detail, you don't want to go in and get a metal system that's going to oil can just because you look up there and it's got all these ripples and you're like, what the hell? You wouldn't want that. You'd hope that your roofer can identify that before you even consider going metal. So 1 to 2 weeks on the metal for a standard system. I always like to say 2 or 3 weeks on a custom house. You get over 30 to 50 squares. The demo and the dry end is going to take 1 to 3 days on those style homes, depending on the complexity, depending on the existing materials, the height, the slope, and all that. It's in the installation, the flashing detail, where workmanship shines. And in metal, it's a measure twice, cut once trade. It is a craft. And these sheet metal guys that we have, I do not want them to create any issues. I want that first panel to be perfectly square to make sure that when we set the rest of the panels moving forward, we're not going to have an issue. And then the flashing detail being this, like, the most important aspect after that. So ventilation can be addressed as well. There's a lot of prep that goes involved when you're using high temp underlayments, etc., to create breathability as well. If you have a system now on the membrane side of things, for at least how we flow, on the flat roofs for residential, you see these on the designer properties. They're like pre-60s flat roofs. A layover may only take 2 to 4 days to wrap up. A full replacement on these residential properties, we're talking flat roofs for the most part, 212 and below. The flat roof may take for a replacement, may take an extra day. So we had 2 to 5 days on that, depending on the size. And then we can start to dip into commercial. So commercial property can range in all sorts of different material requirements, building usage, occupancies, sizes especially, heights as well. In excessively large projects for flat roofs, we'll just start with TPO, then work our way backwards. You may have crane time involved. The crane time and the staging process of a commercial project will likely take a half to a full day. I've always been surprised at how long the cranes take to load ISO, coverboard, and all the membranes, and then stage them throughout the private property such that not overload in one area where you're going to have some sort of collapse. That's part of the roofer and the crane's responsibility, making sure that they're not going to have issues with structural integrity overloading any given area. Den's deck is heavy. Those pallets are probably about 1,500 pounds a pop for the units. The rolls as well. You get a 10-foot roll, it could be 500 plus pounds. You get a bunch of those bundled up, you're going to have to spread them out. So it's hard to give ETAs at the commercial level because the size can vary so much. You can have terminal level or distribution centers that are 50 to 100 plus houses in one, but you only have to install one system. So that even though they may move relatively faster because there's not that much complexity, it's just open fields, right? You're ripping, you're flowing. Those systems will take longer just because of the scale. That goes without saying. On the shingle side for multifamily commercial, it scales up. The demo, the dry-in, and the install, there is a capacity that the shingle guys have. You're going to hit your 30 to 50 squares a day, roughly, for a good crew. And the cleanup as well is going to take into account all that. So you can imagine some of these property managers that have the multifamily complexes and such are going to expect installs that could take weeks, possibly months, to run through the complex to do things properly. So setting expectations is key, and then listening and asking good questions about what that ownership, that decision maker's priorities are outside of safety cleanup and a leak-free roof. What do you care about most? Oh, it's a timeline. Well, I want to be done in less than 30 days because we're going to be starting to paint at the end of the month, right? Cool. Thank you for telling me, right? We need to know this information up front so that we can have a good, flowing, smooth project without any issues. And that's why we got the shoots. That's why we have in-house teams to make sure we have demo relationships to make sure we can speed things up when necessary, and we keep our shinglers shingling. So on the metal side of commercial, again, weeks to months. There's a project that I originally wanted down in Eugene. A GC had requested a bid, and this was on one of the University of Oregon's oldest buildings. Has literally like hand-drawn CAD building drawings still. Beautiful. My ego wanted it. My ego's like, oh, you could figure it out. You could figure out the materials. You'll find the world-class metal guys they're speccing. We could do the membranes and all that. And my ego wanted it, but I knew logistically that with what's happening, at least up here regionally in Portland, we would be spread too thin to try and manage that project, pull it off successfully without a hitch, and then to manage everything that we're going to have here in Portland. Didn't seem like a smart move, right? It seemed like more of an ego roof, for sure. One of those that you have to step back on and say, well, I'm going to put 4 to 8 hours in this estimate. It's going to be accurate, right? It's going to come out successful. We're going to have the right team for it and everything. But what's it going to do to Portland's capacity? How much resource is it going to take away from what we can do to serve the region that has built us up where we are today? Didn't want to do it. Had to ultimately decline, and it hurt because it would have been a once-in-a-lifetime roof. There's copper detail. There's amazing amounts of material. The GC involved was high caliber. Obviously, you're working with the University of Oregon. It would have been awesome. But you got to listen to your intuition on things like that and follow your gut. Make sure you understand the risks involved. And for me, the risks of having to go, and it wasn't about the commute. An hour and a half down to Eugene, no big deal. My parents live in Florence still. It's like, would have been cool. But I think that the best ROI for us is serving our regional clients here in Portland at a higher level than trying to spread ourselves too thin, going too far. That's just my 2 cents. So that is the rough outline of how long it takes to install a roof in and around Portland, Oregon. Stay tuned. Catch you on the next one. Ciao.